So what do you do for a living, and how did you end up in that field?
So I'm a documentary filmmaker and photojournalist specializing in underwater photography and conservation stories. Um, so basically what I do is I direct and produce documentaries, working on 3 features right now, producing 3 of them, directing one, and the third one is in the works. So we'll see what happens once that comes into fruition. And then the photojournalist side is independent on my own. I work for various companies, shooting conservation stories all around the world, from Africa to any stories, even local. I just recently did a shoot for the New York Times in Monterey Bay. That'll be coming out in a month or so. How I ended up in it is a kind of a crazy story. Never saw myself becoming a photographer or documentary filmmaker until I got to college. I went to college at the University of Southern California, USC for short. And there I set this path to be a marine biologist. The ocean has been my passion and love since I was a child, and I wanted my job to be outside and involved in the ocean. So I was on this career to be a marine biologist, and as I was working in all these labs, doing field research, it was all amazing. I'm doing some incredible research, some that could lead to potential medicines that could, cure diseases and save the world. But as I'm sitting there, I'm like, no one is reading this. No one is reading these journals except if you're in academic class.
Yeah.
And my goal is to make the biggest impact and save and protect as much as I can while I'm here. And that's when I realized, okay, maybe heavy science is not the route to take if I want to make, a big impact. I'm just working on one little task for my whole life, pretty much. And that's when I ended up in Micronesia on a research expedition for a class, my sophomore and junior year. I went 1 year with the class, and then I actually came back the next year as the TA. And I happened to meet someone named Ron Leidick, who he was basically an adventure photographer shooting for National Geographic, travel and things like that. And that's when I realized, wow, this is a really cool way to raise awareness and get to people. You can reach 1 million people with one photo, or 1 billion people, with a photo or a video.
Yeah.
And by then I was always into photography, but that's really when things started to click. I always knew I wanted to go underwater with photography. I had saved up since high school, bought underwater housing, etc. And then everything kind of went from there. I escalated very fast. Now I'm here.
That's awesome. I love that. So, you're basically saying, how a picture's worth 1,000 words, and like when you get a video, what's that worth? I don't think anyone has put like a number on it, but it can evoke so much emotion from one shot versus the typical, okay, here's a science journal, this is happening, everyone be aware. But like you said, no one's going to go through, or most outside of academia won't go through and really spend the time reading the nitty gritty. But if you put it in a video format or a photograph, then it like really gets to their hearts. So that's really cool how you're spreading conservation through your love for videography and photography.
Definitely.
So when did you first start getting into the outdoors? When was it your passion?
Ever since I was a kid, any chance my dad got to take me to the beach, we were at the beach every weekend. Maybe if we took the day off, if the surf was good, take me out of class to go surfing. And surfing was my first big love for the ocean. I was always on the surface, I never really thought, okay, what's beneath me? I knew there was fish, but I never really thought more of that when I was a kid. I was just like, okay, cool, ocean, waves, beach, I kind of tied it with my dad. And then as I got older, we even started doing trips to Yosemite, doing a lot of hikes, and of course the love for nature. But I was always drawn to the ocean. I always needed to be in the ocean. And when I was in high school around 13, or actually a little older, 14, 15, when there were no waves, I was like, what do I do? And I started spearfishing with one of my good friends who I saw doing it. And I was like, I want to do that. That looks really cool. And that's when I stuck my face in the water and I was like, wow, this is what's underneath while I'm surfing. Like, I never even thought this was here. And I just needed to show people this. And I just absolutely fell in love with the ocean. And ever since then, I would call it an addiction. I have to be in it all the time. I have to be near it. And yeah, it's been a love affair ever since.
Nice. I love that. So I mean, I know you have this huge addiction and love for the ocean. Is that your favorite place to explore, or do you have another specific spot that's like your go-to, your favorite from your entire experience so far?
Totally. I mean, the ocean, hands down. There's just too much to explore. I tell people, I mean, I love hiking through the woods. I love all of that. But the thing is the biodiversity amongst just one little cubic of ocean, that as soon as you jump in, there's so much fish, there's so much life. And
Hmm.
compared to the outdoors, okay, there's trees, and then you look down, there's worms, there's birds, and I love that. Don't get me wrong, but it's a little more hard to visually see it compared to when you hop in the ocean. It's like, wow, I probably just saw over 1,000+ species, and that just blew me away.
Yeah.
But I mean, anywhere hiking, anything outdoors, I'm in love with. But the ocean's not always welcoming, so those are the days I go inland.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, so out of, in your travel, how many of the 50 states in the United States have you visited?
At least, I was counting this. I think at least 15, um, give or take, plus or minus. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I spent a lot of time along the West Coast. Extensively traveled all through the West Coast of the United States. Me and my friends would do road trips from LA to Vancouver Island in the
Nice.
summertime. Yeah, so definitely got to explore the Pacific Northwest, and of course fell in love with it. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Nice. And which one would be your favorite?
Still California. I mean, I'm born and raised here.
There you go. I like it.
Yeah, yeah. Don't get me wrong. There's so many cool things out there, but yeah. I mean, I think California just has everything.
I mean, it's hard to beat. It literally has every
Yeah,
climate, and it's like an outdoors person's paradise. So,
totally.
and then as far as like going outside of our country, what's your travel experience like there?
Totally. It's all crazy. Last year I was in 5 different continents, gone for about 6 or 7 months, working and sometimes traveling for fun. But I'd have to say, if I were to choose a country that I'd want to go back over and over again, New Zealand. Absolutely incredible. Probably because it reminds me exactly of the central coast of California. Very
Uh-huh.
similar, very, very similar ecosystem. Um, it's just gorgeous. It's absolutely stunning.
Awesome. Love it. So I know you're more of an ocean goer, so maybe instead of a hike, an
Hmm.
experience in the ocean, and then maybe as well tackle an inland experience.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to know like best experience or?
We can go through the whole gambit. We can
Yeah,
start with
yeah.
best. Yeah.
Hmm. Um, Best experience in the ocean. I mean, everyone tops the next. Specifically in California, for those if people are watching this aren't divers, the visibility is not always good, so we don't get the luxury of being able to dive with 100-foot visibility every day like Hawaii or somewhere tropical. So I think it makes it all that much more rewarding when the visibility is good. And just one day comes into mind, up in Monterey, the visibility had to be 80 to 100 feet, which is so rare. You probably only get that a few times out of the year, and the sun was just bursting through the kelp. There were fish everywhere, sea lions swimming all around, and I was just sensory overload. It was just incredible. I just got out of the water with the biggest smile on my face, and everyone knows who's ever been in the ocean with me that I just come out and I just can't stop smiling. It was just like blows my mind. Um, and then best experience on land. Um, it's too many, anytime there's a sunset. I love sunsets, and there was this actually one ridge up in Big Sur called Pruitt Ridge, and it just looks
Mhm.
over all of Big Sur, and even if it's foggy or cloudy, you're usually above the clouds, so you just watch the sunset over a sea of clouds. So absolutely
Wow.
gorgeous. Yeah, you have to drive up there. You definitely need like a four-wheel drive car, and then you can hike all throughout it, but it's absolutely stunning. And you ever get a chance, you gotta definitely check it out.
Yeah,
um,
for sure. That sounds
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely incredible. And then you want me to shift into bad experiences?
So yeah, so I always like to hear people's scariest stories, and then I
Yeah,
also like to hear like a comical story. So lead into whichever you'd like to go to.
totally. We'll start with the scarier story. Um, I don't like to say it as much because people always have this fear of sharks, but it's inevitable. You spend a lot of time in the ocean, you're going to see a lot of sharks. And to preface it, sharks are to me, they're like puppy dogs. They're very harmless until the situation gets bad. But me and my friend were actually in Malibu and we were spearfishing. And this area that we usually go to is notorious for a certain shark called the taupe shark. And they're very harmless. They're almost like, again, like I said, puppy dogs. They'll come up to you, probably 6 feet in length. And they'll swim all around you, just test to see what you are. And, nothing's going to bug you. But of course, my buddy shot a pretty big fish. And when you're out in the ocean, you put the fish on a thing called a stringer, which is basically around your waist. And if you put food in front of any animal, they're gonna try to eat it. So the thing with sharks is you never want to turn your body to them. You always want to, stand your ground, keep an eye on them, and make sure that they're not thinking that you're prey. But as soon as my buddy thought the shark was gone, he turned, and the shark came out of nowhere and started charging up to him, and he wasn't looking. So I had to dive at the shark and basically say, "We're not prey, back off," and like bump him with my camera, and then it just took off. So my heart was definitely racing, when you're going at a shark, it'd be a quite scary experience. But it's either that or I don't know what would have happened. Hopefully it would have been okay, but everything worked out in the end. It did circle back once as we were in the shallows, but ever since then it's been fine. I've seen him there like a million times and haven't had an issue. And then definitely most comical experience would have to be this hike I did in Big Sur with a few of my friends. It was about an 8-mile hike, and we came to this loop, and we could have gone right or left. We didn't really know which way to go, and we decided to go left, which meant like 6 or 7 miles uphill. And if we went right, it would have been like a mile or two uphill and the rest downhill. So that sucked, but definitely a fun experience.
Yeah. I mean, when you're out there, it's kind of nice to take that. You take a guess and then you go and see what happens. And it sucks sometimes when you have a big uphill, but when you get to the top, it's all down from there, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So on these trips, I guess you don't experience too much winter weather, right?
No, definitely do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know if
definitely.
you stayed on the coast so for winter weather and for, nice summer hikes, what are your go-to pieces of gear?
Yes, summer's easy. Just a pair of nice shorts, lightweight shirt, backpack, water, and some super lightweight shoes. Specifically in the summer, you can always shed layers, but if you're wearing as minimal layers as possible, you're pretty fine. I think the only thing you really have to worry about is the sun. I mean, the sun will beat down on you. So make sure you got some good sunscreen or some type of shirt that's going to block the UV rays. And in the winter gets tricky. I've been super, super interested in like sub-Antarctic regions and eventually want to venture off into those. And specifically diving gets real cold. And I think the biggest thing that people forget is like your hands and head will keep a lot of warmth, beyond just pants and a jacket. So a good pair of gloves and a beanie will keep you warmer for a lot longer than you expect. I was in Iceland for a little bit, and I ended up buying these gloves that were there because my gloves were just so bad. Like they just wouldn't trap heat, and that made the biggest of difference.
Yeah, cool. Nice. So do you have any trips planned to sub-Antarctic, or is that a far off goal?
I wish. I had such a close opportunity to go to Antarctica and it fell through. Fortunately, my next few trips will be tropical, Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. And then we'll see if this one happens with coronavirus. Who knows now? We're supposed to go back to Africa, but who knows what's going to happen with that? Yeah, things are kind of crazy right now.
Yeah, and have you checked on the situation there? Is it like the U.S.? Because I know the U.S. is getting just slammed, but
totally. Africa is really, really, really unique. I was just talking to my journalist yesterday, and we were having a conversation about it. And the U.S. is getting hit super hard, and Africa has actually barely been touched. But we kind of have this weird like prediction that as soon as like the Earth the world, releases people back into traveling, that Africa is going to get hit really hard because they don't really have a strong infrastructure that's going to be able to protect them. Once it gets there, it's going to spread like wildfire. The populations are so tight packed, and I hope that doesn't happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, I hope people like really take it and make sure they're not just like protecting themselves, but protecting others, because that's the key to slowing the spread and hopefully defeating it completely.
Yeah, definitely.
And so being out in California, I know that's an outdoor paradise. Are there
Mhm.
any local brands that you love out there? Like what are your go-to brands for, hiking gear, ocean gear,
Totally. I mean, commercially, Patagonia all the way. Not just because of their mission. I mean, their quality is amazing, you know. So I
Mhm.
try to, if I have, some extra money to splurge, we call it Patagucci because it can be quite expensive sometimes.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, if I can, Patagonia, and then some local brands. Little store called Canvas by Caton over here. It's a surf shop that's been around forever. Um, just little local surf shops to get some board shorts or sunscreen. I always try to support local businesses in California. Um,
Yeah.
but it's hard nowadays when you got online shopping and whatnot.
Especially now, we have no chance to even
Yeah,
go to the store. So it's like it's
yeah,
all
exactly.
online.
Especially now. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hmm.
uh, so I always like to get definitions from everyone I interview. And what would your definition, or what does conservation mean to you?
Totally. Conservation means to me is just having a voice for the planet. A lot of these places can't speak to us. They can't be like, "Hey, you're hurting me," or "Hey, I'm in need." It's something you just have to visually see. And I feel like in my line of work, or even in the science that I did, conservation was giving a voice to that. Being like, "Hey, look, we're polluting this river, we're polluting this ocean. Let's make a difference." Um, and hoping we can. Seems like the silver lining in this whole thing is that the planet's kind of resetting itself, but who knows once the gates open back up what's going to happen.
Yeah, I hope people like take that into practice even
Hmm.
after this. So I'm not sure, like this could be just like completely false information, but I saw something about the Arctic Circle. It had a huge like gap in the ice, and it started to close during this whole thing. I'm not sure if that's true, but I'll try to dig into that and maybe include a little bit of that in
Yeah,
this
yeah.
interview as
I
well.
just I just read that similar article. I think it was about the ozone layer, and that actually
Or
like
yeah, the ozone layer.
filled
That's
up.
what it was. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I just saw that article yesterday too. I didn't read it yet, but that's on my list.
I need to do some more digging. I definitely don't want
Yeah,
to put that out there if it's not true.
no,
But if it is, like
definitely.
I'm for sure gonna tag that in here because I thought that was really cool to see. And then also all the wildlife you see, like deer,
Hmm.
like everything just taking back over the land that it used to roam free. So it's kind of cool to see as people stay in, all the animals coming out.
Yeah, no, it's super cool to see. Even around here, I'm on the Central Coast right now, and the deer are getting really close, and you start to see a lot of cool things start to come out.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Hmm.
So as far as what we can do to keep our parks clean, our earth clean, what are some things that you always tell those that like love the outdoors, or they're asking, hey, what can I do to like be part of this leave no trace and conservation program? Like what would you direct people that want to learn more about conserving our parks and wildlands to do?
So I think the first thing is be more mindful. A lot of people get so caught up in life and commercialism, and you're getting ads sent to you constantly on Instagram. But just like going to the store and selecting a brand that may not pollute or may do something good for the planet. Um, Definitely being more mindful because those things are there and they're comparable in prices. A lot of people will make the argument that oh, it's too expensive or it's more expensive than X, Y, and Z. But it's like then they'll go spend money on, I don't know, something luxurious. So
Yeah.
it's definitely just taking a step back and seeing little changes you can make in your life that might affect the planet later on in life. Reducing your footprint, that's the biggest thing we can do, and if everyone kind of comes together, hopefully we can make a big change.
Yeah, awesome. And is there anyone that comes to mind when you think like conservation, and like have you ever heard of Protect Our Winters?
Yeah, of
That
course.
group?
Yeah,
Yeah.
protect our winners. There's the international, I want to say league, International League of Conservation Photographers. Um, it might not be league, it might be like group or something like that. But it's
Uh-huh.
really really cool. So it started by Christina Mindemeyer, National Geographic photographer, and she basically gathered all these photographers that work in this like photojournalist world and added a new title called conservation photography. And they share daily online or everywhere, tell stories about conservation. So that's definitely a good place to look at if you want to read stories about what's going on and ways you can help.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of all I had. If you have any like additional information you'd like to share about yourself, or maybe plug your upcoming projects or past projects you'd like people to see, you know,
Yeah, no,
Here's your
definitely.
shot.
Yeah, take a look out for the New York Times article. It'll be on the science section sometime in May or June. It's on the deep sea. It's gonna be a really, really, really cool story. Not a lot of people can go to the deep sea, so definitely check that out. And then I have a documentary, won't come out for another year from now, but it's on the first 3D printed community in a rural town in Mexico. So something that's definitely going to revolutionize the housing market and hopefully, I mean, end extreme poverty. So we'll see.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are two like really cool things that are coming up. That's all I can think of right now.
All right. Well, I'll be on the lookout and I'll share it back on this interview once it comes around.
Perfect. Thanks, man.
Yep. Thank you. So yeah, I guess that's the interview
Awesome. Sweet.
podcast, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.